Got no station.
There we go. Can you hear me? Oh yeah, that's working. Do we have to add the station to the stream for it to work?
Jeez. And Rob, we should be on actually.
That's crazy. Crazy stuff. Did you mute them?
Got you now. Okay, cool.
There they are.
Okay. You have to get your settings right, Josh?
Oh, blame it on Josh.
Yeah.
I don't have any control over the screen.
I see him over here doing something, Josh. I think he's cutting you off.
I know what's going on.
Maybe it's David behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What have you done, Mike? Have you said anything yet?
What's no, I've been trying to figure out why you're not on there.
Okay. Cool.
I can only do one thing at a time.
It's all right.
All right. Anyways.
So how long we have Adam Dick on today?
All right. So top of the hour here at 10 o'clock your time. Well, I've had Dick on from the Ron Paul Institute. He didn't really give a time, but at least I know he'll stay at least the hour to discuss the vaccine passports that are more and more commonly being talked about. I guess we can talk about it now, guys, if you want to, leading up to Adam coming on. I mean, I don't know if either one of you guys had an opportunity to listen to the Liberty Report from last Monday when Dr. Paul and Daniel McAdams were talking about not only, how they're using these things for a passport, and as Wenzel's talking about the nudge that they're using the vaccines for. When I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I didn't see that Liberty report.
Will anyone say no?
That's yeah, that's the sad thing. I think most people are not going to say no, because they're going to look at it and say, oh, I need this for my liberties. There's an article in Target Liberty. I think it was one of the ones written by Adam Dick. I can't remember. But they point out a quote by a former head of Planned Parenthood, a doctor, and he's complaining that people might practice their liberties if we don't crack down soon and get the vaccine passports out as a condition of practicing liberties. So there's a very concerted effort to convince people that in order to be free, they have to get shot up with a poison. And if they're doing it in a short time frame. And people are, I mean, I personally know of two people. I won't allude to who they are, but I personally know of two people who already got the poison shot because in the future they want to be able to travel. And so the propaganda is working. You almost don't even need the vaccine passport. It's people are so obedient that they'll just give up their liberties and do whatever they're told, whatever they're alluded to have to do to practice them. They talk about they'll have these QR codes to go into the store, which they've done in places. I think in Australia they've already started that. But you have to have your QR code to go into the store, and it'll tell you, denied, or you're able to go in, or whatever. And the picture I've seen, they have someone there checking you at the door. But my guess is they won't even need someone at the door to check you. All you need is a machine that says the word accepted or denied, and people will just voluntarily turn around and leave. Meanwhile, someone like you or me, we'll just walk in the door and just ignore the whole thing. But we're very much the minority. Most people will just obey what the machine tells them to do. There's almost no reason to even enforce any of this because people are so obedient already.
Well, people can get tired of things, though. Hopefully, I assume David threw this article up here from the Ron Paul Institute. The Florida governor signs executive order prohibiting vaccine passports. One of my boys sent me a text. The Missouri Senate just passed an amendment to ban COVID-19 vaccine passports. Have you guys seen anything or heard anything from because I think it's something that's got to be, it has to be addressed because it's going to happen. When you're talking, Mike, about how they're saying, well, people just go along with it. And, when I was mentioning the nudge, so California Governor Newsom is saying, we can open stadiums. I'm not going to force anyone to do anything. So, but only 10% of the people can be in the stadium. But if you enforce a vaccine passport, then you can have 50% of the visits coming from the stick of the government. But everyone is going to have to make some kind of decision, I think, with the vaccine. 3 or 4? Oh, do we have them?
Yeah,
maybe we don't have them.
Oh yeah, you're cutting out there. But let's see. What were you saying, Josh? About?
I thought he was saying time released shots. So you get a shot, and then it, after so long, it deteriorates and kills you.
Oh, I didn't hear that, but I mean, it could be. Maybe
that's what I thought. I was hearing.
Yeah.
time release, so that way they can't say it was the vaccine. You know, it's natural causes.
Oh.
Couldn't have been the shot because it was 3 months after we gave it to you that you died, or
Right.
a year.
Right. Well, you know, vaccine trials are
Great
supposed
population control.
Yeah. Well, you know, the vaccine trials are whenever they have a new vaccine out, when they do the phase 2 and phase 3
Do
trials.
they have one for cancer yet?
What, a vaccine?
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that they're.
You know, that cures cancer.
Yeah, that's one of the things that they're working on. There is a
They got a shot to cure COVID.
yeah. Well, see, that's one of the things they're working
Fast.
on.
Yeah.
And there's a talk by the head of Moderna on YouTube, and he was Josh just popped off. We lost him for a moment. Anyway, he was talking about the gene therapy programs and what they want to do. And what they want to do is to be able to create a personalized vaccine for each individual that would attack their cancer. And that was the goal. So that's kind of goes along with the whole idea that this is a gene therapy experiment, this whole vaccine thing. They pointed out there was
Be a
an
way
article.
to get rid of us ruffians.
Yeah, well, there was an article back in 2019. Actually, there are several articles, but they're easy to find. Anyway, they pointed out that the FDA had relieved a lot of their regulations for experimental gene therapy.
I think people have a choice to make,
Mhm.
which is more information. I don't think is helpful at this point.
Right, they need to make the decision. I'm going to do this, or I'm not going
I don't
to.
think people need more information.
Mhm.
I think they just have a choice that they have to make, and
Yeah,
and the choice might not be. They might have to make a choice to live with, quote unquote, less freedom by not going along. That's the normal outcome of not going along with stuff in history, is that you get less leeway. That's the normal historical outcome. And that's an okay outcome, because I mean, that's fine. It'll be a bummer if that's the way it goes, but people have to actually make the choice that their own decision, that doing what they think is the right thing is more important than being able to do what they want. And there's kind of an idol of freedom in the United States, or an idol of liberty, where people think that's the ultimate end, and everything is worth sacrificing for that. And so now that's being twisted, and people are sacrificing their own decision making over right and wrong about with regards to what will give them the most freedom. And so it's been twisted, and right and wrong is not the most important thing to a lot of people. And if it isn't, then whatever you think the most important thing is, you'll be willing to sacrifice to that. That's kind of the definition of idolatry. So people are going to have to make a choice. And the choice might be to have a much more limited life than they do right now, to do the right thing. And that has nothing to do with information. People don't need more information on this.
No, there's plenty of information available.
They've already heard it. They have to make a choice. There's nobody out there who knows.
Yeah, some of them haven't, but yeah, I mean,
everybody already knows this stuff.
People need to be aware that they're engaging in a gene therapy experiment.
Yeah,
I think most people aren't necessarily aware of that.
Yeah, but that doesn't have to do with the choice that they have to make. Everybody knows at this point. Everybody who's listening to this anyway knows at this point that there's nothing scary out there. Everybody knows there's nothing scary because nothing scary has happened. So everybody knows this is a ruse, and they get to make a choice to go along with it, to go along with the scam, or not to go along with the scam. It's really that simple. There's no calculation to it. there's no weighing the costs and benefits. There's a right and wrong decision, and people have to make it. And people
Right.
have
We're
been
not waiting
avoiding
for
me.
something to.
There you go.
You're not waiting
Yeah.
for something to come along that's going to make the pill taste better.
Right. Because while everybody who listens to this, most people here, they're folks here I know who are really concerned about, friends and family who aren't going to go along. And it's not a discussion about their health. It's a discussion about their social acceptance.
Mhm.
So people already know this. They don't need more information. They need to be confronted with the fact that they're going to have to make a choice, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and not everybody's going to go along with them. And they have to get ready to make that choice themselves. And there's no calculation to it. It's not a cost benefit analysis. It's none of that. It's just a choice you're going to have to make. And for people who have been practicing small amounts of that in their lives over the last year, it's going to be a lot easier, for people who like at the airport in Alaska, all the non-mandatory, mandatory stuff. For folks who got to experience what it's like to walk up to a mandatory testing thing that's completely illegal and just say no thank you and walk away from it, they're going to have a little bit more courage because they've been exercising that.
Yeah.
For folks who have gone into a store where there's nothing and there's signs everywhere that say you have to do this, but there's nothing enforced, and even a bunch of the employees aren't complying. For folks who have been going to those types of places and still complying, this choice is going to be a lot more difficult. But for the folks who've been practicing their courage, it's going to be a lot easier. And that's what you're seeing, like with your friend you're talking about, Mike. There aren't even any rules about this yet, and people are certain folks are preemptively doing it, basically out of fear. They have no courage. They haven't been practicing. They haven't been building their courage. They have none. And inconvenience is more terrifying to them than doing the right thing. Inconvenience is scarier to them than servitude. So they will be given a life of convenience and servitude. That's the choice they're making.
Well, that accounts. Yeah, that accounts for most of the population.
Sure, it always
and
has. That's not new.
And there's that. Yeah, there's that study. I can't remember what it was called, but I think you talked about it before, Dave. People are capable of what is around 150 decisions per day, and it's a lot easier. So if you have someone in quote authority making your decisions, and that authority is presenting all sorts of decisions that have to be made, it's a lot easier just to have them make the decisions, and then you can make the more mundane decisions every day. And that's what people will choose, is to have someone else make the decisions, and that's essentially what they're doing, is having someone else make the decision for them.
Yeah, that's
because
true.
It presents fewer future variables that they have to deal with.
Yep, don't have to think about it. Well,
Right.
So they think. I mean, so that's the appearance. But and in one of the beliefs, Josh was talking about people getting tired of stuff. I think that's true to a larger extent than anybody knows. You are never going to see anything in the news or on the television showing places where this stuff isn't happening at all, and there are lots of places like that. You're just never going to see it, but it's happening all over the place. People who are going along with stuff now think that there's an end point where it stops, and there isn't. I mean, what's being talked about is, I think the Moderna treatment is actually, it's described as a software update or whatever. So anyway, there's no end to it. It's not a one and done thing. And that's how people are treating it. They're like, well, I'll just go along this one time, and then there won't be anything after that. That's not how it works. It will never get easier to practice courage than it is right now. It will never get easier than now. And so if if you're too weak to be courageous now, you need to start getting stronger, because it's not going to get easier. It will only get harder.
Right. Yeah. Well, it will get harder as they develop their autoimmune diseases. Then they'll have more decisions to make.
Well, for sure, right?
Those are the variables they don't think about right now.
For sure.
But yeah,
But
I mean,
there will
Go
be
ahead.
one after another after another. There will, all this stuff's, all this stuff's coming. It's very obvious from the last year. 2 weeks, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Oh, we're gonna wear masks just for a little bit. Only a few, we're just gonna close a few venues, and then it's all shut down. And for a year, for more than a year. In Ontario, where I have a home, but I'm not living, thankfully. They just went into a 28-day, whatever, code red or whatever they call it, lockdown. There's no event. Like if I'm in Idaho right now, I got friends in Florida. There is nothing going on here that's out of the ordinary. People are fine. People are getting on with their lives, playing baseball. There's no people dying in the streets. And folks in Ontario who have been absolutely stellar at complying with everything, are being treated as if there's an actual pandemic going on right now. And most of them believe there is. So that's where, if Americans want to know what comes from compliance, they can just look there. It's April, the sun's out, there's nobody getting sick. And most of my friends in Ontario are terrified of the variants, the hyper-virulent variants that are sweeping through the province that nobody knows anyone who's actually gotten. Nobody knows anybody who's sick, but they're all drinking from the television, and they've all given up their ability to practice courage in this past year. They've spent the past year complying. So now they're going to live out what they've practiced, which will be compliance. All the way. I mean, they won't even need box cars to take them to the camps. They'll just tell them where it is. Hey, here's where your internment camp is. Please show up by 10 a.m. So that's the opportunity people are going to have. There's a lot of things that are going to happen that are out of our control, but being courageous and doing the right thing is always in your control. But it comes at a cost, and that cost is real, and that's okay.
Yeah. Well, that's a kind of the story of history. People are always afraid of what's not there, and they ignore what is there.
Yeah. Well,
it's very easy to take advantage of that.
For sure. They get distracted from the fact that they are actually powerful as individuals if they choose to exercise that power. But there are a lot of places where that actually is happening. You're just never going to see it on the television. So the universality of all of this is not entirely true. There are places with significant communities where people are not going along with this, or just won't go along with it. And there are stores and places of business here in Idaho that don't have any signs posted anymore. It's just business as usual. Thanks for coming. There's thousands and thousands. You can tell the homeschool families here. You'll see them walking around. It's like, oh yeah, those are homeschool kids. Total non-compliance. So you're never going to hear about that on the news. You're never going to see it on the news. You're never going to read stories about it. But that is happening. And if people just stick to their principles and do the right thing, it will be as good as it can be.
Right. Right. Well, it's hard to, people aren't, there are only a few people who will stick to their principles. Most of the people's principles are obedience. And we are on break. We'll come back with Adam Dick shortly.
Hey, Adam.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing good. Good meeting you.
Me too.
Josh should be popping back on in a little bit, and we will have. We're on the commercial break right now, but the audio is not getting piped through the video stream
Okay, that sounds good. I heard a little of the last year in Idaho.
right now. This is my wife and I's tent trailer. We've been kind of doing the gypsy thing since all of this began. So yeah.
Good.
Where are you at?
I'm in Texas, near Dallas.
Okay, gotcha. We're heading out to Florida next week to check that out. We got some friends out there.
Oh, good, good. What part?
Gainesville.
Gainesville. Okay, that's up north, right?
Like 40 minutes north of Orlando.
Oh, okay, okay. It's. I thought it was. I'm not too. I've been to Miami and Palm Beach and stuff. So I don't. But not to Gainesville. I thought it was further north than that. Okay.
Yeah,
Very good.
I don't
Well,
know.
have a good trip.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I don't know Florida at all, but good time to visit some of those states.
Yeah. Yeah, so Idaho still has a statewide mask mandate, right?
I don't think so.
Oh,
And
okay.
in the areas that we've been staying, you wouldn't know it. So
Yeah, well, that was kind of true in Texas too. You wouldn't know it in some areas, and the largest correlation was that I found was how Republican it is. In the areas that voted like 80% plus for Trump, hardly you don't even see people wearing masks, and you never have a business that keeps you out, at least not a local business. But around here near Dallas, it's totally different. And it does seem to correlate with Dallas was majority Democrat, so
mhm.
that's how this issue seems to shake out here. I even wrote a little bit about that for taking driving trips here in Texas. I'd look at you'd look at the this was back when the election was going on or just after it. You look for a bunch of Trump signs, and that'd be the area where you stop and you could get a bite to eat and use the restroom without anybody hassling you.
Yeah, we drove across. I think we've been through 15 or 16 states this year, and that is definitely one of the correlators for sure with where you can stop without being harassed.
Right.
There's an urban-rural thing to some extent too.
Yeah, I think so. I do wonder if if you went to some place like some of the where is it where they go skiing in Wyoming and stuff, some of those more like destination places for people for rural vacations. I wonder if it might be a little different, but yeah. But where people are just living and working.
Yeah.
Rurally.
We drove through Jasper,
Mhm.
BC so we were in Canada when all this started, and we drove up to Alaska.
Mhm.
And man, most of Canada was just really, really locked down. It got better as you got through the prairies and everything. But when we were in Jasper this spring, there were no signs on any of the restaurants. We just walked in and had a meal at one place. It was weird. And then as soon as we left Jasper and got into Yukon Territory and everything, it was super, super, scary and authoritarian again. So there's these little pockets where communities just decided, nah, no thanks.
Right.
We got you, Josh?
And we're back. And we have Adam Dick. You on the line there?
Yes, I am.
Hi. Hi there. And David and Josh are on the line as well. So you had a really good article this week about the vaccine passports. You want to kind of go over that?
Sure. When the news came out just a few days back that the Joe Biden administration was considering imposing vaccine mandates nationwide, I thought back to an interview that happened a few weeks earlier in the first week of March, where Fareed Zakaria was interviewing Arthur Kaplan, who's a medical ethicist professor at NYU. And when I'd seen that interview, it had struck me how it was entirely a propaganda campaign segment to acclimate people to the idea of vaccine passports, and that it was inevitable and actually even good for their freedom that they be required to be vaccinated and then be required to show their vaccine passport in order to go about their daily lives, to go to a sports event, buy groceries, even keep their job. And so I wrote about that. I detailed 10 different ways that the propaganda of vaccine passports being inevitable and beneficial were crammed into this one interview segment, and put it out there as a warning to people that they can watch this and they can identify those propaganda aspects. And I provided within there some answers as well as to, why the propaganda was wrong and vaccine passports are actually something that we should fight against. Looking back at it, though, the other day, Daniel at the Institute, I work at the Ron Paul Institute, and our executive director, he sent me an email saying, hey, look, your article's been picked up by Zero Hedge, which is always great because a lot of people see my articles when they're picked up there in addition to the Institute's website. And it was only then that I realized that I actually should have put on a number 11 for the factors of the propaganda. And I didn't see it the first time because I wasn't really watching. I have this tendency with these TV interviews to zone out or even not look at the screen and listen to what is said. But right there in the image that they selected for the Zero Hedge version of my article, on the bottom of the screen in huge letters, it said, prepare to get a vaccine passport, right there. And then when I went back and I watched it, it was there for like 80 to 90% of the interview, just those large letters. And then with the name of the person being interviewed and his credentials underneath it, to even give it more credit. So it was kind of like seeing something from that movie, They Live, where you put on the glasses and you see the real message behind the propaganda, except you didn't even have to put on the glasses. It was right there on the screen, the telling you what you have to do and will do.
Yeah, it's like the propaganda's there and you have to put the glasses on to hide it from yourself, right? So they're the ones with the glasses on. We're the ones who can see. There's one point in your article where it points out they used a scene from Casablanca and that you talked about, and they're asking the guy for the papers, and that's the part that they use for the propaganda. Oh, it's just to keep you safe, right? Well, they don't show the part where the guy has expired papers and he tries to leave and they shoot him down and kill him. So that's the typical media play. Let's just show part of the story to change its meaning, to change its context. Exactly. And it's just to show that they don't want to show the really bad repercussions. They just want to dismiss it as, oh, it's a little inconvenience. You have to show papers every now and then. One of the critical things that happens is not too sure after that, he basically starts off Fareed Zakaria and says that you can be uncomfortable, but post-pandemic, it's something we will all likely have to get more and more comfortable with. And then when he first talks to this medical ethicist, he basically says, okay, tell us why we're all going to have vaccine passports and why it's a good thing. So what they do is very quickly at the beginning, they say, hey, there might be some worry about this. But then from then on, everything is, don't worry, it's fine. These vaccine passports are the best thing since sliced bread. They'll even enhance your freedom, because if you have these vaccine passports, you can go all these places, you can have a job. Well, the reverse of that, they're putting it on its head, is if you don't have the vaccine passport, which requires being vaccinated, then you don't have a job. You can't go those places.
you're basically in a caste system where you're at the bottom. And that's what we have to look forward is that if you don't take the vaccine, if you don't have the vaccine passport, then you're suppressed to this bottom level. Now, luckily, there are some places, South Dakota, more recently Florida, other states that have done less to open up, but still have opened up some, that are showing that you don't need a vaccine passport to go about your daily normal life. You can go about your normal life without staying 6 feet apart from people, without wearing a mask, without avoiding crowds of 10 people or whatever ridiculous low number they put on it. And you don't need a vaccine. You don't need a vaccination passport in order to do so. So hopefully, because those state governments are starting to loosen up, and some of them didn't at all, there'll be greater resistance, and people won't buy the argument that you're actually getting freedom from a vaccine passport when what you're actually getting is the reverse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it seems a lot of people, there are plenty of people who don't like the idea. If you look at, New York crashing and people moving to Florida, DeSantis has kind of become a hero among the those who don't want the vaccine passport. So, I mean, that is a good sign, at least. But there's a lot of propaganda on the other side. For example, there was a new commercial put out by Lady Gaga and a couple other celebrities talking about the was it a well-checked sticker to go on building windows, business windows, that they're complying with certain COVID policies. And so it's not, so you can see that they're using that as the camel's nose getting under the tent. Pretty soon it's going to be, you need a vaccine passport to get in this building.
Yeah, that's the worry. And at least, something I wrote about just the other day, Governor DeSantis in Florida has done an executive order that says the state won't be issuing any vaccine passports, and that businesses can't require their customers and patrons to have them either. So that has the potential, an executive order like that, to set the state up as having a law in direct conflict with any national law that would come into being. And potentially that could protect people in that state and others if they follow and do something similar from the national mandate.
Okay, yeah, and there's of course there's people concerned that if just as an executive order, the next governor could nullify it. So he's trying to pass it as a law in the legislature, it sounds like. That's right. So yeah. Which would be good. I mean, it'd be good for places like Alaska or Texas to follow suit. Is there any indication of that going on in Texas?
I haven't seen it. Our governor is not the most pro-liberty guy out there. He imposed a mask mandate for a long time here, and eliminated it just a few weeks back. And then even that, his mandate pretty much explicitly, his repeal of it pretty much said, local governments no local jurisdiction can have a mask mandate. But then he backed down, like the next day, his staff was saying, no, actually they can. That's not what it means. So they can still have it for all their local government things. Like if you have to go to municipal court, if you want to go to the recreation center and play basketball, all these other indoor places, the local governments still impose their mask mandates if they choose. And way back at the beginning, he'd been saying he was super anti-mask mandate and everything, but he backed down quickly. So there's not much hope from the governor. We have something that in the past seemed good, which was that the legislature meets just every couple of years for a short time. But that in this case, that means that it gives tons of time for the governor to go off and do all these terrible mandates. And state legislators are left to do things like when Governor Abbott put in a mandate about setting up all these testing centers around the state representatives who saw shady stuff they thought going on in what he was doing had to go to court and try to sue him for corrupt activities related to these testing centers, when if they'd been in session, maybe they could have done something legislatively.
Okay. Right. And then there's examples also like Bundy from the Bundy Ranch standoff. He got arrested for not showing up at court. When he tried to show up without a mask, they turned him away. So he actually did show up.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an example of what you were talking about, that you're going to be denied entry, and then you'll just get arrested for not showing. They'll just willy-nilly accuse you of something that you didn't do.
Right, and that's the mask mandate. And if there were a vaccine passport, the same thing could happen based on that. If you didn't have your vaccination, well, maybe you can't enter the courthouse.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, you could get arrested, you could be fined. So it's a very real restriction. And the more they apply it to places, the more people are going to just feel the pressure and give in and be vaccinated. And maybe it'll take a relative being sick across the country. Well, you can't get on an airplane unless you're vaccinated. So they'll say, okay, I got to take the shot now. I held out for so many months, but I do have to see my sick grandparent or parent. And there'll be many instances like that where people will try to hold out, and then it'll just become too difficult to do the things they feel they need to do to make life worth living, to not have the vaccine.
Yeah, and those people in the nursing homes are in really a bad situation because they're going to be told you can't see your family without the vaccine, and so then they're forced to make a decision, even if they believe the vaccine is going to physically harm them, and it ends up physically harming them.
Mm-hmm.
They have to take it in order to see their family. So it becomes a choice of, do I suffer the pain of the potential pain of the vaccine? I should call it shot, not vaccine. Or do I suffer the pain of never seeing my family again?
Right, and
that's brutal.
And it's not just businesses that are going to be required under such a mandate. In New York, where this is already in place, for example, if you have a wedding with over a certain number of people, and it's not too high, in order to have the greater freedom to have this larger gathering, as the medical ethicist said in that interview, you would have to prove that you've been vaccinated. Everybody there will have to be vaccinated. Otherwise, your wedding will be capped at a lower number of people to attend. So here it's a purely private event, a wedding. Maybe even have it in your backyard, or a church, and it has, that doesn't provide any protection. Just like a business, you're now going to have to be, as the father and mother of the bride, you're going to have to be the enforcers checking everybody's vaccine passports, or else you're going to get in trouble with the cops.
So now you become a snitch for the state, almost inadvertently. It's like, I'm required to check these people. I'm required to check all my friends' vaccine passports so they can come over. And now you become the state snitch.
That's right.
What are the ways that, so you don't have to disclose your medical history to a company, right? I mean, that's established law right now. How can, what sort of legal challenges do you anticipate to something like a vaccine passport, which is a disclosure of your medical history to corporations?
Well, I think there will be legal challenges. But where does President Biden have the legal authority to impose an executive order that you have to wear a mask in all kinds of transportation related circumstances, including things that have nothing to do with international travel, like taking an Uber from your house to the grocery store a mile away, right? That's mandated under a national executive order that you wear a mask. So there's and a mask itself, just like a mask is is recognized under the regulatory bodies, OSHA and FDA and everything, as not being something that's generally safe for people to wear. It's not a safe thing to wear, but nonetheless, even though it's recognized, it's not a safe thing to wear, even though it's there's no legal foundation in the Constitution or law to give the president authority to do this executive order. He just did. And as long as it hasn't reached all the way through the court system, as long as somebody hasn't been punished in some way for not wearing the mask in these circumstances, and it hasn't worked its way all the way through the court system, then it's going to continue to be enforced. So that's quite a while, and different courts might do different things. It's not necessarily reliable. I think we have here a potentially large pandemic exception to the Constitution, like they had a drug war exception to the Constitution. The argument is that this coronavirus is so dangerous, even though for most people it's not a danger hardly at all, that all these extraordinary actions need to be done. Just like with the drug war, drugs are so dangerous, and it's so difficult to fight drugs that we have to allow searches and seizures. We have to allow surveillance that didn't happen otherwise. Same thing with the pandemic. Now, we just saw this last week with an example of that sort of thinking playing itself out in the court system. The Wisconsin State Supreme Court, just this last week, they threw out the mask mandate of the governor of Wisconsin. Now, this governor has been super persistent in imposing this mandate. It had even been legislatively thrown out by the House and Senate, and the governor of Wisconsin just went back and did a new executive order putting it back in place again. That's how persistent he's been in this. And it was a close court decision, and the language of authority for the governor was clear, that he only had authority to take extreme actions for a short period of time, and that time was long past, and therefore this mask mandate has already terminated. Now, first of all, it took a long time to reach the Supreme Court, but second of all, even in that court, it was a close decision, and the people who argued on the other side, the dissenting justices, they pointed to the pandemic and how horrible the pandemic was, to try to create ambiguity where there wasn't any ambiguity in the language. And over at the Ron Paul Institute website, I believe we have up, an article by Jonathan Turley, who's a law professor up in Washington, D.C., who's done a really good analysis of that court decision and the arguments of the majority and dissenting justices. So the two big key points from that is, first of all, the government can get away with abusing your rights for a long time before any high-level court is actually going to hear a case that could potentially help you. And then the second lesson from that is, once it reaches there, you're kind of rolling the dice. Are you going to have judges like the majority in the Wisconsin Supreme Court that actually apply the law, or is the majority going to be more like the dissenters and say, well, everybody's going to die from corona. You gotta do anything you possibly can to counter it. So I don't place a huge amount of faith in courts to protect us.
Okay. Yeah, and well, we had a caller on the line. They hung up, but if you want to ask Adam Dick some questions, and keep it on topic with Adam, what Adam's talking about, 458-8255, and let's see. Josh is wondering, if this audio is not working right now, I'm not sure. Do you see the Biden administration using infrastructure money to convince governors to mandate the vaccines?
Well, that's an interesting question. There's a lot of history of that. That was used to lower the drinking age to increase it from 18 to 21. And some states held out for a while, but it's hard to hold out. It's hard to hold out for long when the U.S. government is saying, if you don't change your law, then you lose out on a bunch of money, right? Mm-hmm. So definitely, they could use the control of those those grants to states to try to mandate compliance.
Right. Okay. Well, we have a caller here. Do you want to go to them?
Yeah, let's do it, Mike.
Hi. Hello. You're on the air. Hello. Yes. Go ahead.
Can you hear him, Mike?
Yeah, I heard that. I'm not sure. Did you guys on StreamYard hear that?
No.
Hang on.
No, I just heard him
But-
ask if he could hear him.
Yeah, sorry.
No.
There's a lot of feedback there. I'm not sure what's going on there. Anyway, they were wondering if you guys had, if any of us had heard of the vaccine essentially causing mad cow-like disease. And I have heard of that attacking the the nervous system and causing brain swelling and brainstem swelling. And that's I did say there are at least 2 people I've seen who had that confirmed. So yeah, to answer that question.
Yeah, I haven't seen in particular mad cow, but you're right. I have seen there are people reporting that they've had nervous system problems from the vaccinations. There are also reports of pregnancies terminating because of the vaccination. There's reports of people having major skin problems from the vaccination. People dying in the thousands now after having the vaccination. So there are a large number of reactions that people are having, and some of them are quite severe. The reports of injuries and death from this vaccination are far in excess of for other vaccinations. And it's only in the first few months now. People can be reporting, for the rest of their lives, problems they have from the vaccinations. And because the study of these experimental vaccinations, and it should be noted they are experimental, they haven't gone through the normal process for approval. These experimental vaccinations were only studied for a brief period of time, much shorter than usual. So side effects that appear later after you've taken the drug, they don't have any clue what they are now, except that they could maybe predict them from past attempts to make coronavirus vaccines, because all those past attempts failed in large part because they saw that the side effects were so bad that they couldn't go forward with releasing the vaccines to the public. Now, the only other thing I'd like to point out real quick on that is that I keep using the word vaccine. I use it here. I use it in talking about the vaccine passports. But when you're talking about some of these drugs that are being called vaccines, they're not even really vaccines under the normal meaning of the term. Instead of giving you a form of the actual virus to try to spur your immune system, they deal with mRNA, which is a whole new way of trying to protect people from disease. And so not only are these drugs experimental in that they didn't go through the full length and full amount of activities in the approval process that's normally required, they're also experimental because they use an entirely new method of trying to protect people from disease that hasn't been used in things that have been called vaccines in the past.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Klaus Schwab in his book wrote that COVID-19, The Great Reset, he wrote that synthetic biology and the search for gene therapy cures is paramount in their agenda. And let's see, was it Google and Oracle I saw were contracted by Operation Warp Speed to track people closely for 2 years after they've been given the shot. And 2 years is the time frame that phase 1, 2, and 3 recipients are monitored for side effects. So I agree with you. What it looks like what they're doing is a mass gene therapy trial. They need a large trial size because they want to get this stuff out fast, and they need a cheap way to treat people because in the Great Reset or the Great Bond Collapse, they're not going to have the money to put people through expensive treatments. They're gonna need the cheap pill to give them, and so this gives them the opportunity to experiment with it.
Right, and while at the same time, though, you talk about a cheap pill. There are cheaper and more effective ways to deal with coronavirus. There was hydroxychloroquine was used a bunch towards the beginning, and then ivermectin. These are cheap things that people can use early on to counter coronavirus, prevent them from having to go to the emergency room. But instead, the standard operating procedure coming up from national government medical experts, so-called, is that you don't do anything. You just stay at home and see what happens until you're so sick that you have to show up at the emergency room. At which point, a lot of these earlier interdictions aren't as helpful, and then they start pumping you with pharmaceuticals and stuff that are not proven to be effective anyways. And maybe even in the early days, like in New York City, putting you on ventilators, which are incredibly dangerous. So, it was almost at the beginning in New York, it was kind of just an assembly line to death going into these hospitals. But the other thing too is that you don't ever hear from any of these government medical experts, hardly ever at least, is that there are things you can do to even prevent yourself from becoming sick with coronavirus. And that includes taking vitamin D, taking vitamin B1, zinc, selenium, these sorts of supplements, just getting out in the air and having the sun on you, another source of vitamin D, getting exercise, trying to keep your weight down. These are all things that can reduce your risk for becoming sick with coronavirus, or even in a lot of these cases, they call it a coronavirus death. And it's just somebody who had a whole bunch of other problems too, and happened to have coronavirus. But all of these sorts of good, healthy living things that you can follow would help protect you not just against coronavirus, but also against other things that can kill you as well. But you don't hear them talking about that. It doesn't, if people realize more that they could take action to protect their own health, then they wouldn't be quite as afraid anymore, and they wouldn't be able to be as easily pressured into staying home and keeping distance and wearing masks and being vaccinated as they are, when the only message is, coronavirus is there, it's going to kill you, and the only people who can save you is when you're on death's doorstep at the emergency room.
Mm-hmm.
There, I think there's Bill Sardi and John Rappaport have been writing a lot about the B1, zinc, and vitamin D side of this. And one of the things that they've noted is if you are not B1 deficient or vitamin D deficient, if you're not B1 or D deficient, your odds of dying from COVID-19 go down by it's like 99.5% or something like that. And I think John Rappaport, actually, he's gone as far as to say that a more accurate way of diagnosing. So there's this virus, right? And then COVID is the disease that it causes, supposedly, just like HIV, AIDS is the disease that leads to. John Rappaport has said that if you wanted to most accurately describe the causal factor of developing COVID, it would be B1 deficiency. You are most likely to get COVID if you're B1 deficient. Even more so than if you test positive for the virus using one of these very unreliable PCR tests. So if you're not, he said it could be called just a vitamin deficiency disease if you looked at it that way. And of course, if you're locked in your home, if you're following all the rules, you're not going to get any natural vitamin D. So the rules kind of lead to an accelerated deficiency in a lot of these things.
And it's not, the other thing is that in addition to being a disease that hits people who have those vitamin deficiencies, also it's a disease that's going to affect people that are older. People who are in kindergarten through high school and college age, into their 20s, they have virtually nothing to worry about from coronavirus making them seriously sick or killing them. Very low risk. But at the same time, they've been deprived of being able to attend school in person or having to do it virtually. Or if they do go in person, they have these ridiculous restrictions on them of having to wear a mask and having, plexiglass partitions between them and the other students, only coming to class 3 days a week. I was even talking to a parent down here in the Dallas area of Texas, whose child at school is required when he walks from class to class to hold this plexiglass type barrier thing in his hands in front of his face as he walks around in the hallways to protect people from his infecting them with coronavirus. So all these ridiculous restrictions are placed upon kids who, even if they have low vitamin D, vitamin B, it doesn't matter. They're kids. They're not going to be getting coronavirus, hardly ever, and it's not, in a way that affects them in any way of significance. So that's just another whole group of people that are being placed under all these restrictions, even though there's no need for it.
What do you think people can do? What are like the simplest, if you're to, on a scale of like level 1 difficulty all the way up to, maybe level 3 difficulty, that they'd be willing to take on or able to take on as far as things they could do personally or in their community, relating to, what's being pushed on people and ways to alleviate fear within their own community.
All right. I guess one thing I'd say is you just reach out to your elected politicians and people running for office with a simple message that you oppose all this coronavirus mandates crap. And one example I can give of something I've done. We had a special election here in my town near Dallas a few weeks back, and we're actually having. That was for filling some positions in the city council, and we have one coming up at the beginning of next month for city council and school board. And I just sent an email to everybody running, saying, what is your position about the requirement that our city rec center has, that if you go in there, you have to wear a mask and gloves. That's the requirement of a rec center. If you want to go play basketball, you're supposed to do it while wearing a mask and gloves. It's crazy. I just sent it to all of them. They answer, and then they all supported it. So I was able to follow up by saying that's a litmus test for me. I won't vote for anybody who supports that. And I'll have a similar message for, I'll send to everybody who's running in the general election, and I'll be sending it to the one for the school people saying, about the requirements for students related to coronavirus, the students that are in class. So that's something you can do, and I think it doesn't take a lot of time. It can be short and sweet, and you just make it. This is a litmus test for me. This is a key issue. If you don't agree with me on this, it's not just that we disagree and maybe I'll like you better overall than other people, but you've lost my support and you lost it forever. My county board member, he actually opposed a lot of the coronavirus mandates that came in to Dallas County. And so I sent him, over time, I sent him 3 emails congratulating him and telling him that basically I'm with you now, you're my guy. And I disagree with him on plenty of stuff, but at this point, this is a critical issue. And if he had the courage to stand up for it, I want him to get that support so that he keeps that courage. Another thing I think you can do as an individual is just not put up with it. We had the mask mandate for almost a year here, I guess, and I never once put on a mask. I just go in, they ask me to put on a mask, and I tell them, no, I don't wear a mask. And most places you can do it. Most businesses don't want to lose a customer over it. So do that. I've had 3 businesses where they wouldn't take my no for an answer. And I told them I wanted to talk to the top manager. I talked to the top manager, and I gave them a chance to change, to let me continue shopping. And when they didn't let me continue shopping, I explained to them that they lost a customer for life. And so that's how you have to be. Don't put up with it, and be willing to play hardball. Give up going, for example, to for me, give up ever going again to the local pizza place that had the best pizza. Well, their coronavirus mask policy was unbearable, so you'll get pizza elsewhere.
Yeah, that's good. We went to a place, my wife and I went to a place yesterday that there were two shops right next to each other, and one of them had no signs posted and was doing a ton of business. And we went in there and got some stuff, and then the one next door had all these signs up, and we saw a homeschool family stroll in there, like, as you know, as if there's no signs or anything. We're like, oh, cool. And so we were getting ready to go in there, and then the whole family comes streaming back out. And I was like, oh, well, this will be interesting. So we went in, and the guy said, oh, hey, you got to wear a mask if you want to shop here. It's like, okay, we're done. Bye. So we followed the homeschoolers out the door. But it was neat seeing people go into a place and ask and then just leave. That's fine. I think it's hard if you're an owner of a small business and you see hundreds of people come in the door and then leave. That's a lot harder than if people never come in and ask the question, because you can see what you're missing at that point. So I think that's like a easy action item. Are there any sort of more advanced things that you've seen that are effective? I know we've been talking about Alan Stevo's writing here, and I guess he's taken some of these complaints all the way up, to management of corporations and things like that. And he's actually had some really good conversations along the way with people. Is there anything like that you've seen or know about happening in your area, or have you seen that effect from any of your writings?
Yeah, I've read some of his articles, and more power to him. His approach is different than mine in a key aspect, which is that I never tell people, I don't tell them that I have a health problem that makes me unable to wear the mask. It just seems like I shouldn't be having to fit myself in an exception. I'm just a human being who chooses not to wear a mask. And whatever reason I have, that's my reason, and that should be good enough. So one of my concerns is if you try to just fit yourself into that exception, and you're looking at the policy changes in the future, well, then they just have like, okay, let's set up a process by which people's exceptions can be registered, right? And that's the kind of thing when a vaccine passport comes in. They can register exceptions, right? So maybe there will be a small number of people who can get a vaccine passport and still not take the vaccine. For example, people who are under treatment for cancer. Those individuals may be able to get a medical exemption from taking the vaccine. And they whittle down exceptions in places such as California, where you pretty much only have a medical exemption, instead of other places where you have a philosophic or religious exemption as well. So that's my concern. Is, first of all, I want to make a bigger point, and I'm more willing to be kicked out and make the bigger point than try to weasel my way in with an exemption. But also, I worry that even if you're successful with the exceptions, then they're just going to standardize the process for making exceptions. And most people, like potentially the person who wrote those articles, I don't know what his medical history is. A lot of those people who are trying to get the exception won't qualify.
Mm-hmm. Or they will initially, and then it'll clamp down.
Right.
One of the things that I've been sort of looking for but haven't seen yet is people who are on antiretrovirals, people who are HIV positive. They are not supposed to, I think they're at radically elevated risk for all sorts of vaccines or anything that perturbates the immune system. And I found it fascinating that California, of all places, is being so gung-ho on mandating the vaccine when they have a very large population of people who are at massively elevated risk for mortal autoimmune responses to it. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, I know Anthony Fauci, who's U.S. government's voice on coronavirus and now the top medical advisor to the president. He says everybody should take the coronavirus vaccine. No exception whatsoever. And he says it's absolutely safe. Well, I wrote an article about that a couple months ago, I guess, when he said that, and it's obviously not absolutely safe. And all you have to do is look at the printed material that the U.S. government together with the drug companies have put out about the so-called vaccines. They list all kinds of side effects. They say that there are certain people that potentially, if you have certain issues, that you should tell that to the person who was going to give you a shot. That suggests that some of those people shouldn't have the shots. It says that it's a cost-benefit comparison that you're making. That the idea is not that the shot helps everybody, but that the benefits of taking the shot probably outweigh the costs. Not that there are no costs. So it's an absolute lie to say the vaccines are safe and that everybody should take them. And that's even backed up by the U.S. government and the people, the companies that are producing these vaccines. But nonetheless, that's the message, and it does put people in danger. Even though these experimental vaccines were rushed out, it has been admitted that they're not for everybody. But if you tell people repeatedly that they are for everybody, the people who are at the greatest risk of danger from the vaccines are going to show up anyways and get their shots. And that puts them in an unnecessarily dangerous position. And I'll just say another thing too, is that now they're starting trials on children. The youngest on any of the vaccines now out that a person can take it is 16, and now they're trying out shots on infants through 16 individuals, and they're saying amazing results. These people aren't getting sick from coronavirus. Well, they didn't get sick from coronavirus anyways because they're kids. This is something that doesn't affect them for the most part. But you can virtually be certain that even though they aren't affected by coronavirus, some of these kids are going to be seriously affected by side effects from the vaccines for coronavirus.
Yeah, we were we had a conversation with a friend of ours who asked us about getting vaccinated, my wife and I, and I think it's like if you're under 40, even not even that young, if you're under 40, total official coronavirus deaths under 40 is 2% of the total, and then under 30 it's like less than 1%, and then under 16 it's like nothing. And I think under 4 it was like 46 kids in the last year or whatever, out of whatever the official number is, 520,000 or something.
Right, and all those numbers, you have to discount all those numbers because a lot of these people didn't even die from coronavirus; they died with coronavirus.
Right. Yeah. But it even with the inflated numbers, is vanishingly small if you're under 40, and then if you get to under 16, it's just there's no risk whatsoever. And and the people who have had adverse effects from vaccines are generally healthy, by and large. What about the there's one other implication, which, like, a lot of people think, oh, this is a one-time thing, I just got to do this once, and then I'll get my little permission slip and then I'll be fine. What do you see as the long-term, if people cave now, what do you see as the long-term implications of that?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of talk now about how the coronavirus vaccines could wear off. So you need to have a booster periodically, maybe once a year. How there's new strains of coronavirus that the vaccines might not cover and might be even more dangerous. So that would be another reason next year the cocktail is going to be a little different, so it protects against those. So there is a potential that to keep your vaccine passport current, you'll have to each year get a shot for coronavirus. But once you have a coronavirus vaccine passport, there's a lot of temptation. Government tends to expand. There's a lot of temptation for government to add to that passport. Why not? Flu's dangerous too, right? So why not make it a coronavirus and flu vaccination passport? What about all these other diseases? You can add it, and pretty soon adults are going to be taking vaccines at the same rate that kids are subjected to in order to go to school. And they'll have to do that in order to be able to go to the grocery store with their vaccine passport. But potentially it could be other things too. I mean, maybe it could be things totally unrelated to vaccines. And maybe you could have passports with different levels, right? Kind of like a visa system. You need a visa to visit certain countries, right? Well, maybe you could have a vaccine passport that, based on your activities, like won't let you go to places that have a lot of kids, because it's been determined, hey, you're a danger to kids. So now your vaccine passport, where you can't go to playgrounds, you can't go to recreation centers, you can't go to certain you can't go into McDonald's, because a lot of kids eat at McDonald's, right? Because you're a danger to kids. Why? Because of something you've done in the past, right? Or something you have, maybe websites you look at, whatever. And the possibilities are endless, and you have businesses potentially that would want things on the vaccine passport that would suggest to them things about your credit worthiness or other aspects of you, so that they know if it's worth bothering with you if you're coming to look for a car or something. So and businesses will be working hand in hand with the government on this. I mean, we're talking about the government instituting vaccine passports, but airlines are already instituting, without a government requirement, a lot of places that people take coronavirus tests in order to fly, or that, and before the national mask mandate was in place, the airlines were already mandating the use of masks on airlines. So you'll have the companies, some of the companies, along with the government, continuously pushing to include more and more information in your vaccine passport, and to impose more and more restrictions on what people do. Now, the other thing with the vaccine passport is it's inherently a surveillance device, because if you have to display this passport every time you go someplace in order to be approved, it creates a trail of where you've been. So it's just another way that the government plus companies can potentially keep track of you and invade your privacy.
Okay. We have a couple callers. You want to take one?
Sure.
Okay. Hello, you're on. Yes, I can. Go ahead, Cecily. Yeah. You there, Cecily? Okay.
Oh, no, it went away. I'll call back.
Hello, you're up. Yeah. Yeah, you're on.
Hello.
You're on.
What about the homeopathic medicine being overruled now by witchcraft, government influence?
Oh, about homeopathic medicine? Yeah, so he's asking about homeopathic medicine being overruled by medical influence, so by the pharmaceutical industry. Yeah, I'm here. We're
malfunction. So
yeah, we'll try to figure this out over the break.
We can hear you, Charles.
Hey, homeopathy is now rejected. They don't teach it anymore, and it's been a traditional part of medicine and education in the medical field, and it's directly due to the tradition of vaccines that homeopathy ever had any influence to start in medical treatment in the United States in the first place. So, yeah, there's a lot on vaccines that you can study. Please do. Peace.
Thanks, Charles.
I
Are
guess
there
I
any more
want to
calls
say-
there, Mike?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just say one thing. You know, I don't have a lot of expertise about what he asked about in particular, but I do think that it's important to have medical freedom. And while I'm talking about how these vaccines are dangerous and potentially, and there are admitted dangers to taking them, and how the coronavirus itself is not a threat to many people who are out there taking the vaccine. It's not a big threat, at least. I do think that people should have the recognized medical freedom to choose to take experimental medicines, be they vaccines or other sorts of treatment. But at the same time, I don't think the government should be doing, as it has with these vaccines, doing massive billions and billions of dollars of funding and a huge PR campaign to scare people into taking those experimental medical treatments. It's something that people should be able to pursue on their own, free of any government influence.
Yeah, totally. We're on the top of the hour commercial break there. Mike was trying to blurt that out.
Yeah, hit the break, Mike.
Yeah, Mike, are you on there? Or do you have any callers for the next half hour? Or are we all clear?
I guess we're on the break. I don't know why we're not hearing it. I know why,
Yeah,
actually,
that's
but
okay.
I'm going to try to fix this. I'm pretty sure we should have been back by now.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, if you need to go, Adam, by all means. Thank you for joining us for an hour here. Yep, you're still muted.
Sorry about that. Let's kill the discussion here. This is bad.
Yeah.
I don't know what
Thanks
happened.
for joining us though.
All right. Well, thank you.
And if there's if you action items are really great. If there's any that you put together, we'll look for that in your writing. That's really what people in Radio Land need to hear.
That sounds good. Thank you much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Take care.
Right. If I just close the window, that's what I need to do, I guess.
Yep.
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
Cool. I think I'm gonna check out here too. I'll catch up with you later, Josh.
Yeah. Thanks, David. I don't know what happened.
Yep.
Oh,
Board is down. Yep, that's
board
fine.
is down. Eagle has crashed.
That's right.
All right. See you guys later.